You think your intelligence is what wins you every argument. It is actually the reason you keep losing them. You are exhausted by people who cannot keep up with you, and somewhere along the way you decided that exhaustion was simply the price of being the smart one. It isn't a price. It's a mistake, and it has been costing you for years. You know the exact feeling. A message lands on your phone so confidently wrong that you have to read it twice, and before you've even opened your reply, you're already drafting the perfect response in your head, the facts, the sources, the airtight logic that will finally make them see it. Don't send it. Not because you're wrong, because you've misunderstood what's actually happening on the other end of that conversation. You think this is an exchange of ideas. It isn't. It's a negotiation for status, and the person you're trying to correct isn't reading for facts. They're reading for threats, and the second your correction lands, you stop being someone they know and become one. The modern world tells you the answer is patience. Explain it more gently. Find common ground. Meet them halfway. Machiavelli knew the brutal truth underneath that advice 500 years before it became a self-help slogan. Patience does not work on a person who was never negotiating in good faith to begin with, and being right and being safe are two entirely different games, and only fools play them as if they were the same one. He wrote for princes who had to survive courts full of people smarter, dumber, and more dangerous than they looked. And buried in that 500-year-old survival manual is a method. Cold, exact, almost uncomfortable to use, for handling people whose stupidity isn't a flaw you can fix. It's a weapon they don't even know they're carrying. You've been getting hurt by that weapon for years. Today you learn how it's built, and more importantly, how to make sure it never points at you again. But there is one version of this fool that logic can never touch, no matter how patient you are. And there is a real chance he is signing your paycheck right now. We will get to him. First, you need to understand the trap itself. Here is the mistake nearly every intelligent person makes, over and over, without ever noticing the pattern. You assume that a conversation is a place where the best idea wins. You were taught this in school. You were rewarded for it your whole life. Raise your hand, give the correct answer, receive approval. So your instinct, whenever you meet resistance, is to give a better answer, sharper, clearer, backed with more evidence. You genuinely believe that if you just explain it well enough, the other person's mind will open like a door. It won't. Not because the door's locked, because there was never a door there in the first place. What you're looking at is a wall dressed up to look like a door, and every argument you make is another brick added to it. Machiavelli understood something about people that most philosophers were too polite to say out loud. He wrote that men judge more by appearances than by reality, because sight is given to everyone but understanding to few. He wasn't insulting the average person, he was describing a structural fact about how human beings process the world. Most people don't reason their way to a belief and then defend it. They feel their way to a belief, usually through identity, fear, or comfort, and then they go hunting for reasons afterward. The reasons arrive last. They are decoration, not foundation. So when you present a fact, you are not offering them truth. You are asking them to tear down a structure they have already built their sense of self on top of. Of course they refuse. You would too. Modern psychology gave this exact blind spot a name 4 centuries after Machiavelli described it: the Dunning-Kruger effect. The people most confident in a wrong opinion are often the ones with the least skill to know it's wrong, because the same knowledge required to be good at something is the knowledge required to notice you aren't. Machiavelli did not need a laboratory to discover this. He just watched Florence long enough. This is the first shift you have to make, and it is uncomfortable because it asks you to give up something you have quietly enjoyed your entire life. The feeling of being the one who explains things, the feeling of being needed for your intelligence. Machiavelli would tell you that feeling is expensive, and you have been paying for it without realizing there was a bill. Let's talk about what Machiavelli actually built his entire philosophy around, because it changes everything about how you handle people who frustrate you. He did not write about how people should behave. He wrote about how people actually behave, and he refused to look away from the ugly parts. In his letters, he described watching Italian politics for decades, watching brilliant, well-intentioned men lose everything because they governed as if their opponents were reasonable. He called this the difference between how men live and how men ought to live, and he said that anyone who abandons what is actually done for what ought to be done will learn his ruin rather than his preservation. That single idea is the entire foundation for dealing with people who frustrate your intelligence. Stop governing your interactions as if people ought to be reasonable. Start governing them based on how people actually are. How are people actually? Most people are not driven by curiosity about what is true. They are driven by the need to protect their standing, their comfort, and their self-image. When those things are threatened, logic does not just fail to help, it makes things worse. Because now you are not just disagreeing with their opinion, you are threatening their identity, and identity does not negotiate. It defends. There is a word Machiavelli used for the unpredictable, chaotic force that ruins even the best-laid plans: Fortuna, fortune, the wild and uncontrollable current of events and human unpredictability that no amount of planning can fully tame. He said a wise prince does not waste his strength fighting the river. He builds levees before the flood arrives. He studies where the water wants to go and moves his structures accordingly. A fool in your life is a small, personal Fortuna. You cannot argue the river into flowing the other way. You can only decide where you build. You don't argue with a river, you build somewhere else. Think of the last time someone at a family gathering said something factually wrong with total confidence, and you spent the next 20 minutes building your case, pulling out your phone, quoting sources, watching their face for the moment it would finally click. It never clicked. They simply waited for you to finish talking so they could repeat the exact same claim, slightly louder. That was not a debate you lost. That was a river you tried to argue with. The correct move was never a better argument. It was recognizing, in that first 10 seconds, which kind of situation you were actually standing in. You already know the exact person this applies to. You knew who it was the moment that scene started playing in your head. Let me show you what this looked like in Machiavelli's own life. Because the man did not just theorize about strategic patience, he lived it at the exact moment when it would have been easiest to lose everything. In 1512, the Medici family returned to power in Florence and swept away the republic Machiavelli had served for over a decade. He was dismissed from his post, then accused, wrongly, of conspiring against the new rulers. He was arrested, imprisoned, and tortured. A man who had spent his career reading the machinery of power now found himself completely crushed by it, with every reason in the world to be bitter, loud, and self-righteous about the injustice. He did not fight the current. He read it. Once released, Machiavelli retired to a small farm outside the city, stripped of every title he had once held. He spent his days doing menial farm work and playing cards with local villagers, by his own account, wasting time with men far beneath his intellect, gossiping about small things, appearing to the world as nothing more than a disgraced, harmless has-been. Anyone watching him would have concluded that Niccolò Machiavelli no longer mattered. But in the evenings, alone, he changed clothes into what he called his court garments and sat down to write. In that quiet, unwatched hour, he produced The Prince, the very text you are learning from right now, a work so sharp it would eventually influence rulers for 5 centuries. He was not idle. He was invisible. Invisible is not the same as powerless. Here is the lesson hiding inside that story, and it is the first real weapon you're going to take from this video. When you are surrounded by people who cannot meet you at your level, the mistake is not staying among them. The mistake is showing them your full self while you do it. Machiavelli played cards with fools during the day and built an empire of ideas at night, and the fools never once suspected which version of him was real. You do not owe anyone access to your actual thinking. Not your loud coworker who is certain he understands the market. Not your relative who lectures you at dinner about subjects he has never studied. Not the manager who mistakes confidence for competence. The same one signing your paycheck, who we are still building toward. You can nod, you can smile, you can play cards. And in a separate, protected room of your mind, you can keep building. Something most people who quote Machiavelli miss entirely is that he said a prince must know how to imitate two animals, the fox and the lion. The lion cannot defend itself from traps. The fox cannot defend itself from wolves. Therefore, one must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. Most people who quote this focus only on the lion. They imagine Machiavelli is telling them to be aggressive, dominant, forceful. They miss the entire point. The fox comes first in the sentence for a reason. Before you ever need strength, you need the ability to recognize what kind of danger you are actually facing, because a fool is rarely a wolf. A fool is usually a trap. A wolf attacks you directly. You can see it coming. A trap is different. A trap looks like an ordinary conversation. It looks like an innocent question at a family dinner. It looks like your manager casually asking your opinion on something he has already decided. The trap is not designed to defeat your argument. It is designed to make you spend your argument so that you walk away exhausted while they walk away unchanged. You lost nothing to their intelligence. You lost it to your own willingness to engage. The fox does not walk into a trap and then try to fight her way out with brute force. She recognizes the shape of it before her foot ever lands, and she simply walks around it. So how do you recognize the shape of a trap in real time? It has a specific feeling. Your pulse quickens slightly before you have even finished hearing the sentence. You feel a pull to correct, to defend, to prove. That pull is not your intelligence activating. That is the trap closing. The moment you notice that pull, you have already won, because now you get to choose whether to step forward or step around. Let's talk about what stepping around actually looks like, because Machiavelli was disturbingly practical about this. In The Prince, he advises that a wise man should always follow the paths beaten by great men and imitate those who have been most excellent, so that if his own virtue does not reach theirs, at least it will resemble it. Translated into plain language, when your own strength is not enough to win directly, borrow the shape of someone who already knows how to move through this exact situation. One of the sharpest tools available to you, and one that Machiavelli's contemporaries used constantly in court politics, is the deliberate use of exaggerated agreement. Not sarcasm loud enough to be caught, something far more precise. You take the fool's premise and you carry it, calmly, politely, one full step further than they intended it to go, until the weight of their own logic becomes visible to everyone except them. Picture a coworker who insists, with total confidence, that reading books is a waste of time because, in his words, real success comes from instinct, not theory. The instinct of most people is to defend books. Don't. Instead, lean in with genuine warmth. That's fascinating, you say. So the doctors performing surgery on your family, you'd actually prefer they skipped medical school entirely and just trusted their gut. And the pilot flying you home for the holidays? Best if he never studied a manual either. Just pure instinct at 30,000 feet. You have not attacked him. You agreed with him completely and simply extended his own logic to its natural, uncomfortable conclusion. Watch what happens next. He will backpedal. He will suddenly discover nuance he did not have 30 seconds earlier, and you will have spent almost no energy at all because you never argued against him. You only asked him to keep walking in the direction he already chose. This works because of something Machiavelli observed again and again in the courts he studied. Foolish confidence is rarely built on a foundation. It is built on momentum, and momentum only survives when nobody asks it to keep moving. The moment you ask it to continue, it either has to keep going into absurdity, or it has to stop and quietly reveal that it was never going anywhere solid in the first place. Before we go further, you need to be able to tell the difference between two kinds of fools, because Machiavelli treated them completely differently, and treating them the same is exactly how intelligent people burn themselves out. What happens when you can't tell which kind you're actually facing until the damage is already done? The first kind is the loud fool. He announces his ignorance before you even ask. He interrupts. He corrects things he has never studied. He needs an audience, and the moment he gets one, he performs certainty like it is a personality trait. The loud fool is not actually dangerous to you, not directly, because everyone around him can already see what he is. Your instinct to correct him is not really about him. It is about your own discomfort at staying silent while something false is said out loud. That discomfort is yours to manage, not his to fix. The second kind is far more dangerous, and Machiavelli spent considerably more of his writing on this one. The quiet fool. He does not perform certainty. He collects it slowly, in private, and he acts on it with total confidence at the exact moment it can no longer be reversed. He asks careful questions that sound like curiosity but are actually reconnaissance. He remembers who disagreed with him. He is patient in a way loud fools never are, and patience, even when it is built on flawed reasoning, is a genuinely dangerous quality in another human being. You handle these two completely differently. The loud fool you let speak, because his own words do more damage to his position than anything you could say. The quiet fool you watch, because he is gathering information about you the entire time he seems to be doing nothing at all. The loud fool is the coworker who corrects your grammar in a meeting about revenue. The quiet fool says nothing in that same meeting, then repeats your idea as his own 3 weeks later, once it has already been proven right. Take a breath here, because the next part is the one most people watching this actually came for. Now, an honest question, because Machiavelli would insist on honesty with yourself even while he taught strategic dishonesty with others. What happens when the fool is not your coworker or your uncle, but your boss? The person who signs your paycheck, controls your promotion, decides whether you keep your seat at the table. This is where most advice about dealing with difficult people collapses completely, because most advice assumes you are dealing with an equal. You are not always dealing with an equal. Sometimes you are dealing with someone who has less understanding than you and more power than you, and that combination is the single most dangerous situation Machiavelli ever wrote about. He was blunt about it. He said that men in general judge more by what they see than by what they feel, and that anyone who wishes to deceive will always find someone willing to be deceived. A powerful fool does not want to be corrected. He wants to be confirmed. He wants a mirror, not the truth. He needs, on some level he will never admit, to feel that his position is earned and his judgment is sound. The moment you display more insight than he can process, you have not helped him, you have accidentally reminded him, in front of witnesses, of exactly what he fears most about himself. This does not mean you hide your competence forever. It means you time it. Machiavelli spent years working under rulers whose intelligence did not remotely match their power, and he survived and rose by mastering a very specific discipline. He let them feel large in small, harmless ways. He asked their opinion on matters that did not matter. He deferred visibly on questions where the answer cost him nothing, and he saved his actual insight, the sharp, decisive, valuable thinking, for the exact moments when it could not be ignored, ridiculed, or credited to someone else. Ask your manager which font he prefers for the slide, right before you present the strategy that will actually move the numbers. He will remember the font conversation. He will barely register that the strategy was never his to approve in the first place, and by the time he notices, it is already running. You have not submitted anything real. Your judgment stays entirely intact underneath. What you have given up is visibility, not authority. It simply becomes invisible until the precise moment it needs to be seen. There is a cost to all of this, and Machiavelli never pretended there wasn't. Living this way requires you to give up something that intelligent people quietly crave more than almost anything else: the satisfaction of being visibly, publicly correct. You will watch people believe things that are false. You will watch them make decisions you know are flawed. And you will have to sit with that without correcting it, because the correction would cost you more than the mistake ever will. This is the part where most people's philosophy stops, because it sounds cold, and honestly, it is. But Machiavelli was never interested in comforting you. He was interested in keeping you alive, professionally, socially, and psychologically. In a world that does not reward the people who are simply correct, it rewards the people who are correct and unthreatening at the exact same time. There is a deeper reason you keep engaging with fools long after you know better, and it has nothing to do with wanting to win. It has to do with a quiet, almost noble-sounding belief that if you just explain it well enough, you can save them from their own mistake. This feels like generosity. It is closer to arrogance. You are assuming that their limitation is a puzzle you are meant to solve, rather than simply a feature of who they are. Machiavelli's entire body of work rests on one deeply unfashionable idea. People do not fundamentally change. Circumstances change, incentives change, behavior adjusts to pressure. But the underlying character, the raw material of who someone is, stays remarkably consistent across an entire lifetime. He advised princes to study a man's past conduct as the single most reliable predictor of his future conduct, because people reveal, through repetition, exactly who they are, and then they keep being that person no matter how many well-crafted arguments you offer them. Once you actually accept this, something in your chest loosens that you did not know was tight. You stop waiting for the version of your difficult coworker who suddenly becomes reasonable. You stop hoping the next conversation with your relative will finally land differently. You start treating their pattern the way you would treat weather, not as a personal insult aimed at you, but as a condition to plan around. Machiavelli would call this maturity, not cynicism. The fox does not resent the trap for existing. She simply learns its exact shape, and then she stops stepping in it. There is one more thing worth sitting with before we finish, because it explains why this entire subject feels so personal, even when we are technically just discussing a 500-year-old book about Italian politics. Somewhere in your life, right now, there is a specific face attached to everything you have just heard. A parent who cannot be reasoned with. A partner who turns every disagreement into a referendum on your loyalty. A boss whose confidence has never once been tested by consequence. You did not click on this video because you were curious about Renaissance philosophy. You clicked because you were tired, and some part of you was hoping someone would finally explain why being right has never once felt like winning. It hasn't felt like winning because it was never the actual game. Machiavelli knew that centuries before you were exhausted enough to need him. So where does all of this leave you? Quieter, probably, in moments where you once would have argued. More observant, less willing to hand your energy to people who are never going to spend theirs on you in return. You will still be intelligent. You will still see the flaws in the argument, the gap in the logic, the fear hiding underneath the confidence. The difference is that you will no longer feel obligated to announce what you see. Machiavelli understood something that most people never fully absorb, even after a lifetime of watching it play out. Power is not the ability to prove you are right. Power is the ability to get what you actually need from a situation, while the people around you remain convinced they were the ones steering it the entire time. Intelligence wants an audience. Power does not need one. The next time someone speaks with total confidence about something they clearly do not understand, watch what happens in your own chest. Notice the old pull to correct them, and instead of following it, ask yourself a much sharper question. What do I actually want to walk away with? Because the moment you answer that honestly, you stop needing them to be wrong out loud, and you start using everything Machiavelli spent his life learning about people who never saw you coming. Everything you just learned assumes you are the sharpest mind in the exchange. It was built for fools, and it works on fools. But somewhere out there is a mind that has read this exact page before you did, and is already using it on you, and that is not a problem you solve by staying quiet. If what you just heard already made sense to you before I finished saying it, you were never the audience this channel needed to convince. Subscribing will not change what you already know. It just means you stop finding this material by accident.